It's a quiet afternoon in Maplewood. The kind of day where the breeze carries the scent of blooming flowers and the streets hum with the rhythm of everyday life. But just around the corner, an incident was unfolding that would shake this peaceful town to its core. A moment so raw, so powerful, that it would leave people questioning the very foundations of justice and equality. The sound of sirens cuts through the tranquility, abrupt and jarring. A sleek black sedan, modest but elegant, cruises steadily along the road. Inside sits a woman of poise and power, her calm demeanor betraying none of the gravity her title carries. Her name is Maya Jameson, Maplewood's first black female state attorney. She's on her way to a community outreach meeting, a routine stop in her tireless pursuit of fairness and equity in a system she knows too well is flawed. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights flood her rearview mirror. She glances at her speedometer, well within the limit. No stop signs missed, no turns unsignaled. Confusion flickers across her face as she eases her car to the shoulder, her fingers instinctively gripping the wheel. The officer approaches her window, his strides purposeful, his expression hardened. "License and registration," he barks, not even bothering with a greeting. His tone is sharp, clipped like the edge of a blade. Maya obliges calmly, handing over her documents without a word. But the Officer Grant Miller, isn't interested in civility. His eyes dart between her and the paperwork, a shadow of suspicion clouding his gaze. "Whose car is this?" he demands. Maya raises an eyebrow. "It's mine," she replies, her voice steady but firm. "Everything you need is right there." But Miller doesn't stop. He leans in closer, scrutinizing her as if searching for a reason, any reason, to escalate. "Do you work? Where did you get the money for a car like this?" His questions drip with contempt, each one a dagger aimed not at her answers, but at her dignity. For a moment, there's silence. Maya's jaw tightens, her patience tested, but she knows the weight of her position, the weight of her skin. She chooses her words carefully. "Officer, I'm the state attorney for this district. I'm sure you'll find everything in order." The words hit Miller like a slap, but instead of diffusing, his ego ignites. His disbelief turns to disdain, and he steps back, hand resting on the holster of his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle," he orders, his voice now laced with hostility. Maya hesitates. She knows her rights. She knows she's done nothing wrong, but she also knows what happens when defiance meets authority in situations like this. Slowly, she opens the door and steps out, her heart pounding but her head held high. By now, a small crowd has begun to gather at a safe distance, drawn by the tension crackling in the air. Phones are out, cameras recording. And then, Miller does the unthinkable. He grabs Maya by the arm, rougher than necessary, pulling her towards the hood of the car. The murmur of the crowd grows louder, a chorus of disbelief and outrage. "Is this really necessary?" someone shouts. But Miller doesn't care. He's too far gone, too blinded by his prejudice to see the storm he's unleashing. Maya's voice, calm but unwavering, cuts through the chaos. "Officer, you're making a mistake. I suggest you call your supervisor. Now." For a moment, Miller falters. Something in her tone, unshaken, unyielding, gives him pause, but his pride won't let him back down. Instead, he cuffs her, ignoring the gasps from the crowd, ignoring the voice in the back of his head whispering that he's gone too far. It doesn't take long for the supervisor to arrive, his face a mask of concern as he steps out of his cruiser. He knows who Maya is. Everyone in law enforcement in Maplewood does. The moment he sees her, his expression shifts from confusion to horror. "Grant, what have you done?" the supervisor breathes, his voice barely above a whisper. Miller looks around, realizing too late the gravity of his actions. The cameras, the crowd, the undeniable truth staring him in the face. The supervisor orders Maya's immediate release, his apologies spilling out in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. But the damage is done. Maya straightens her blazer, her composure intact despite the ordeal. She looks at Miller, her eyes piercing but not hateful. "This isn't about me," she says quietly, her voice carrying a weight that silences everyone around. "This is about the countless people who don't have cameras, who don't have a title to shield them. Remember that." The fallout is swift and unforgiving. Within hours, the footage goes viral, sparking outrage far beyond the borders of Maplewood. News outlets pick up the story, headlines screaming of injustice and systemic racism. Miller is placed on administrative leave, but the public demands more. They demand accountability. They demand change. And change comes. Miller is fired, his actions condemned by officials who can no longer ignore the glaring flaws in their system. Protests erupt, not just in Maplewood, but in neighboring towns, as people rally behind Maya and the message she stands for. But Maya doesn't stop there. She uses the platform thrust upon her to push for reform, to shine a light on the cracks in a system that allowed someone like Miller to wield power unchecked. She meets with community leaders, law enforcement, and legislators, turning her pain into purpose, her humiliation into hope. And as the weeks pass, Maplewood begins to heal. Conversations that were once whispered are now shouted from podiums. Policies are rewritten, training programs overhauled. Maya's ordeal becomes a catalyst, a spark that ignites a movement. This isn't just a story about one woman's courage in the face of injustice. It's a story about a community's awakening, about the power of accountability, and about the unyielding demand for equality. Because in the end, justice isn't just a concept. It's a fight worth having, no matter how long it takes.